questions at this point? Okay.
Thanks, Rodney. As we look, and traditionally in the industry, as we look at contractual obligations we have with cities, generally there is some mechanism in place for adjusting the rate on an annual basis. And here in the city of Meridian, it's 90% of the consumer price index, which over the last several years, the consumer price index has been really low, not much inflation going on. And so we have seen a trend actually where our actual costs are exceeding the conditional use permit. And so it continues to be a little bit of a concern for us where we're eroding margin every year, but we're not asking for anything different there than what is stated in the contract. The other part of that is that the other common stipulation in a contract is if there's a situation where there's a change in law, an uncontrollable cost is created or changed, that cities traditionally build in some sort of a stopgap for that. And that could be disposal, what we pay for disposal, tax increases that are kind of beyond the pale of the or the scope of the CPI. So that's why we're talking about that. We fought very hard to not see the passage of those bills. We think the fuel tax bill, particularly on the natural gas, is the wrong direction for the state and really took a draconian step backwards in dealing with that. We understand that we need more money for highways, but the steps they took on that was really a 1,200% tax increase. And so we will continue to work on that. We'd like to see something change on that, but this is the way it stands right now, and the law came into effect in July 1st. On the household hazardous waste collection, I thought we'd update you a little bit on that. So beginning in October of 2000, the City of Meridian began a monthly collection of household hazardous waste, and then over time that was increased to a weekly collection. Now the collection that happens is on our property out on Franklin Road. It's once a week, and the money that we're talking about here pays for the manpower to actually collect it and then move it to the Ada County Household Hazardous Waste building. Then the county pays for all the processing and transportation and that. It's a county-wide program, and then each city then decides to what extent they want to have collection sites locally. And that's the City of Meridian's is once a week at our facility. In the past, this program has been funded by the sale of recyclables. And so what's happened in the recycling markets are that there used to be two sources of revenue on curbside recycling. It's the fee that the customer paid for or paid, and then there was always a small portion came back through the sale of the commodity. And world markets have changed to the point where now the commodities, once we gather them, the processing of them, the baling of them, and the transportation to the market outweighs the value that we get for that. It'd be a little bit like a farmer raising hay that cost $100 a ton and he can only sell it for 90. That's basically kind of what's going on. So what was being used was that value above the cost of the commodity was used to fund the household hazardous waste program. That has eroded to the point now where there is no money left. In fact, Republic Services has subsidized that for the last several years. So not only was there not money available, but we have been paying out, and it's looks like it's going to be around $500,000 where we've actually subsidized the household hazardous waste program and the commodity, the sale of the commodity over the last several years. And what we're talking about is that we feel like this is not sustainable, that in line with what the other cities do, that the service that is being provided to the city and the citizens is funded by the citizens rather than out of the sale of the commodity, which is not available anymore. So as part of our request for that is that we're asking that 24 cents per month per household be added to the bill, and that can either then be forwarded to Republic Services to pay for the household hazardous waste, or it could be just paid directly by the city. Either way, we are hoping that the commodities, the value comes back, but for the foreseeable future, we're not seeing that right away. So even if you take this action today, Republic Services will continue to subsidize curbside recycling. So far this year, we've subsidized it about $67,000. So in other words, you know, you paid us to collect it, then it was processed and then sent to end users. And the difference in that processing and transportation was, it cost $67,000 more than the value of the commodity. And we're not proposing that we're not asking the city to do anything different on that, but we are asking that because there's no funds available from the sale of those commodities, that if we're to continue the household hazardous waste program, that we need a way to be able to fund that. So I'll stand for any questions, or our group will stand for any questions.
Council, any questions?
Madam Mayor?
Mr. Kavanaugh.
Dave, a couple of questions for you. Talk to me about usage of this household waste program. Is it something that a significant amount of our citizens are taking advantage of? Is it a small percentage of citizens that are taking advantage of? I mean, how are you tracking the popularity or the usage of that program?
I appreciate that question. That's a good one. Let me we do track and we ask if you've used it before, or if you're new. And it's the statistic I remember that it's about 80% of the customers have done it at some point before, which could be 5 years ago they came in, and about 20% each month are new. And this is the most popular collection site in the county, and you can cross jurisdictional boundaries. So meaning if you live in Meridian but you work in Boise, you could take your whole household hazardous waste to one of their sites. And I think we get maybe a little of that back. But if you're within the county, and they do ask if you live in the county or not before they'll provide the service. So I'm looking here at, yeah, in June it looked like we had just over 1,000 participants come through the site.
Okay. Follow up, Madam Mayor. Dave, is that a good ballpark number? Is about 1,000 people a month, give or take?
Yeah, I think that June was a fairly good month. It looks like July was 520, May was around 500.
Okay.
So
between
yeah,
5 and 1,000.
Yeah, so between 500 and 1,000. And like say it, from what statistic I remember, like say about 80% have used it at some point in the past. Doesn't mean they come every week. And about 20% are just people that have never used it before.
Maybe another question. Dave, maybe you can indulge me because you are definitely a subject matter expert on this stuff. Around the country, is this the model? To me, at a 101 level approach, it seems like we're asking a lot of our citizens to front the cost for what a very small percentage of our citizens use. And I'm just curious, is this the best mousetrap to address this issue?
It's interesting in that a lot of things in residential service is really, it's a value statement of the community. Obviously, here in Idaho, we don't have a shortage of landfill space. And it's always the cheapest to just put it in the landfill.
Sure.
And there's actually exemptions for household hazardous waste. There's nothing really legally that there is hazardous waste in your house because of the limited commodity or the amount that you produce. But it's really a value statement that communities make as to what programs you're going to have on top of just put it at the curb and it goes into the landfill. So curbside recycling, household hazardous waste tend to be, in my mind at least, a little bit like parks and libraries and things like that, that they don't necessarily pay for themselves, but they are a part of the services provided by communities, and people look to those communities for those services. And it becomes, so a household hazardous waste program is not kind of like way out there. That's very normal service provided in a municipality. We are fortunate in that Ada County has got very good contracts in place for the disposal of it. So I would say for the amount of household hazardous waste that we're keeping out of our landfill, the amount of money we're paying for that is, we're getting a real bargain because of the arrangements that are put in place.
And certainly, I think you find that prevention costs less than cleanups and overloading our landfill. And that is, I guess, if we ask the Mr. Historian over there, that we would talk about this approach. While we've been very fortunate to have been able to cover it through the recycling and the commodities that have seemed to tank, and but recycling and disposing of this kind of household waste is very important to the environment and the cost if we don't do it. And I guess that's just been a policy decision that the city has made up to this point, and that would be part of the discussion if that cost is still worth it. I think for the few that do use it, or the smaller percentage, I'm hoping that everyone that has the kind of qualifier, they're not just dumping it in their can. I can tell you that for sure.
And I think that's to my point, is that I think that there's a significant amount of our citizens that are just probably doing that. That there's 1,000 households that are the leader in this, just like there's a small percentage of households that are doing the grass recycling program, which I applaud both of them. But with the grass recycling program, that's something that our citizens are paying to take advantage of. It's not a cost burden that has been put onto all of our citizens. And I wonder, as much as I applaud the household waste recycling program or collection program, is it something that all of our citizens should be paying for, if a small percentage of them?
Well, it is interesting. I appreciate that, and that's a great perspective, because you look at it and you say, well, should everyone be paying and taking advantage of it? So if you're not using it, you're actually the one putting the pollutants in the landfill. So we've given you a vehicle to not do that. Now, if you choose to go ahead and increase the amount of chemicals and paint and things in the landfill, that really is adding cost to what we have to do to manage that waste stream. So I think that's a great, kind of the reflection of that perspective is, rather than look at who's not using it, say, you know what, maybe they should be paying to try to encourage them to do something other than just throwing it in the landfill.
I appreciate that. Hence my question, is this the best mousetrap that's out there?
I think it is, yes.
Madam Mayor?
Mr. Zurabek.
If you're going to try to capture it, yep.
Just to sort of resurrect a discussion that we had several years ago in response to somebody that wanted to opt out of the trash collection program entirely and say, oh, I'll haul my own to landfill. I don't want to pay you to pick it up. What came out in that discussion was the experience in other communities where they don't charge everybody and therefore say, okay, you're paying for the service, you might as well use it, is that people tended to collect far more stuff in their garage than they should, or find a place on the side of the road to dump it. And at that time, I think we wisely chose to subsidize whatever we needed to subsidize and tell the public, no, you can't opt out of this. Yes, you are going to pay for it, and please use it.
Sure.
Because we don't want it collecting in the garages or being dumped in the middle of the night on the side of the road. So I'm in favor of subsidizing it if we need to.
Madam Mayor.
Ms. Mylum.
Also, so Luke, I asked the same questions at the SWAT meeting. Why don't we just charge people to drop off the hazardous waste? But really the answer is then a lot fewer people will use the program, a lot more hazardous waste will get put into the dump, and which is just bad for our community altogether. And at the price of less than $0.25 per household, I think it's worth it for our community as a whole. So that's where I.
Madam Mayor.
Good questions, because I asked them too.
Mr. Kavner.
I'm going to go back then to the subject matter expert. Dave, are you able to articulate how much we've been able to divert from the landfill since this program has began in Meridian? And I recognize I'm putting you on the spot. And I
Yeah, you
apologize.
are.
Yeah, but maybe Mr. History over there knows.
Yeah. I don't know if Rochelle is.
10 million tons.
And if not, Dave, it's fine. I just was.
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
I will follow up. I've got some good information. I don't have it right at my fingertips, but I will follow up and get that to you.
Excellent. And Madam Mayor, I think this is probably the third time they've said one last question, if it's okay. But Dave, can you talk to me about your fuel costs now versus a year ago? I recognize that as a state we've increased our fuel taxes, but what I see at the pump is that fuel costs less now than it did a year ago, and I'm just curious what that impact has been on you, your organization, as far as cost savings.
You bet. Yeah, I'm happy to do that. The consumer price index that we use, one of the elements of that is fuel. So what we see is when fuel prices go down, that drives down that consumer price index. So we do see that fluctuate up and down, but it is reflected in that. There are other indexes that more accurately reflect our actual cost structure. There's a water, sewer, trash index. As we've looked at that, it's actually higher than, and I don't need to tell this group that, sewer water increases have been more than the rate of inflation the last few years because of all the laws and the changes there. So traditionally, the index that we use has a lot of different elements in it. One is fuel, and we think it actually lags behind what our actual cost increases are. To give you an illustration on the fuel tax increase on the natural gas, we are just starting our fleet of natural gas trucks in Meridian. We have a number around the valley, and the impact on us was $300,000 in fuel tax increases. So a significant increase. To give you an idea, the way the state was working with the natural gas is you could actually buy a fuel permit, and it was around $300 a year, and then you didn't pay on a per gallon. And so we went from about $300 a year to now paying on a per gallon basis to $2,500. So we saw an $1,800 a truck increase just in that tax, and then a 7 cents a gallon increase on all the diesel. So yeah, it does fluctuate up and down, but we see that reflected in the consumer price index.
Madam Mayor, sorry. Then one additional follow-up. If the changes are based on the CPI, why then an additional amount based on the fuel tax increase? Walk me through that. the process behind that.
Right. As I was talking about, most municipal contracts have a normal CPI type increase, but they also have a provision for increases in taxes. That consumer price index is the one we use is a Western United States, so it doesn't, a data point for fuel taxes in Idaho probably aren't even reflected in that. So that's why you have those two different things. One is uncontrollable cost increases that we had no way of knowing or could predict that the state was going to do 1,200% tax increase on us for natural gas, and I would argue that it's not even reflected in the CPI. The other thing, like say, there's other things that could do that. We enjoy relatively cheap landfill disposal cost, but that could go up 30%. And if it did, we'd have no way of the consumer price index reflecting that, because it's really it's a broad index over I think basically the Western United States, and so it wouldn't reflect things like that accurately.
Thanks, dude. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions, comments? Okay. Well, thank you, Dave.
Okay.
Okay, council, you have the report and the schedule. Did we ask what SWAC did?
Madam Mayor, yeah, there are a couple SWAC members in the audience, but the SWAC did move it forward with a recommendation to approve.
Okay. And so the next step is to look for council's action on moving this forward to a future meeting through resolution.
Madam Mayor, members of council, yeah, since it's less than the 5% by statute, you can move forward with just a resolution to approve the increase. At a future meeting, we can bring a resolution forward if that's your direction.
Madam Mayor,
Ms. Mylum.
I move that we approve the recommendation of the SWAT Commission to accept the increases proposed with a resolution at a future meeting.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Do we want a date specific?
Madam Mayor, members of the council, probably the date you'd like to have it back, certainly, but also the date you want it to be effective. I don't recall specifically if there was an effective date recommended by the SWAC or by...
It's October.
Yeah, oh, that's right. It's based on the fiscal year. So it's the October billing cycle, I think.
You can bring the resolution back next week.
Next week?
Okay. Okay, anything further from council? Madam Clerk, will you call roll?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Cavanagh.
No.
Councilmember Mylum.
Aye.
Councilmember Byrd.
Aye.
Councilmember Roundtree.
Aye. Councilmember
Councilmember Borton.
Aye.
Councilmember Zaremba.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you for being here. Item 7A is a public hearing on the proposed fall fee schedule for the Meridian Parks and Recreation Department. I see Jake here. Hi, Jake.
Thank you. Good. How are you? Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. As you see before you, we have our activity guide fees for this fall, 2015. Our guide will go to print tomorrow and be released Friday. Couple new classes this fall on the youth side of things. We're excited to offer a Robotics 1 camp with PC Adventures Learning Lab in Eagle. And another activity that I'm excited about is Starlight Mountain Theater Dinner and Show for the seniors in our community. So like I mentioned before, trying to ramp up those activities for that demographic in our community, and excited about taking that trip up to Garden Valley on September 11th. And with that being said, I can stand for any questions regarding this fee proposal.
Thank you, Jake. Council, any questions regarding the schedule?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to provide testimony on this item?
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Byrd.
seeing now nobody wants to testify, I move we close the public hearing on the proposed fee schedule for the Meridian Parks and Recreation Department.
Second.
Motion is second to close the public hearing on item 7A. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All ayes, motion carried. Item 7B is Resolution 15-1081.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Byrd.
I move we approve resolution number 15-1081 for the fee for Meridian Parks and Recreation Department.
Second.
A motion is second to approve item 7B. If there's no discussion, Madam Clerk, will you call roll?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Cavanagh.
Aye.
Councilmember Mylum.
Aye.
Councilmember Byrd.
Aye.
Councilmember Roundtree.
Aye.
Councilmember Borton.
Aye.
Councilmember Zaremba.
Aye.
All ayes. Thank you, Jake.
Thank you.
Item 7C is, I think it's fiscal year. I don't know what a P stands for.
Program year, Madam Mayor.
Program
year.
year. Thank you.
Is it PHISC? No, I'm just kidding.
No, that is the program.
That's a new one. I'll turn this over to Sean, who will tell us what we need to know.
I hope that will suffice. Madam Mayor, members of council, thank you for allowing me to be here this afternoon to talk to you about next year's, which is program year 2015, which is going to be fiscal year 2016, coming on to calendar year 2016. This presentation of the draft action plan and the public hearing is the final step for submission and approval for our coming year's projects. The priorities focused on the coming year are supported by our current consolidated plan. The strategies being decent housing and suitable living environment. I'll leave the slide here for a moment. This slide is a breakdown of our 2015 program year allocations. As a program overview, the expected award for next year is $330,000 approximately. Just a quick note on clarity, this is not meant to be, the total is not meant to be misleading from the subtotal. It does not equal $330,000 until you recognize that $49,000 roughly is coming from 3 previous program years, 11, 12, and 13. That's unallocated funds that we've had from prior years that has been sitting there. We've been using it ongoing for different projects like the Idaho sidewalks projects and things like that. However, with the first in, first out process with HUD going away, we don't want to leave any unexpended funds in prior years. They haven't decided how it's going to work going forward, but it's probably apropos to move that from previous years, apply it to the next coming year, and then deal with 14 and 15 and 16 in their own program years and reallocate as needed as quickly as possible. The math does add up once you take into account that $49,000 from previous years. This is our geographic distribution of funds. As you can see, we have 3 public service projects or public facility projects that are actually going to happen within the LMI community itself. One thing to note with this map, you saw one last year, and some of you in previous years, there was only 3. Our LMI area has doubled in the last year. That is just a catch-up of some other data from ACS. So the 2 north of Cherry Lane and Fairview, and 1 being 2 only north of Fairview, and 1 south to the highway. So for future years, this gives us another opportunity to use CDBG funds in those particular areas for public service, or for public service and for public facility projects. Do we have any, is there any questions on this slide particularly?
Questions on this slide? How's that compared to the former LMI area?
Madam Mayor, the former LMI was
Cherry to
it was Cherry to
Interstate?
Franklin, so those 2 there, Cherry to Franklin, and then the 1 east of Maine. And that was all we had, and we've had that for several years.
So this is the new computation with the new ACS data from 2006 being formulated in, added in, that the new area median income has changed, and that shifted the area median income to the right. So this probably captures individuals who were either previously at area median income or above and are now left of that line, as well as the ACS data that just hadn't caught up with what the funding sources were yet.
Okay, thank you.
For our distributions of funds, this is public service dollars. Our public service dollars, the ask was actually less than the cap, as I've explained before. Because of that, Meridian Food Bank, we decided to increase their ask to meet the cap. That seemed appropriate. In previous years, we had asked them to take less to give room for some other public service agencies that were trying to use those funds. This was an interesting year because we didn't have, or rather, we accepted every full application in some form or fashion for this year's action plan, probably because we had enough money to do so, and the projects that were being asked for were both qualifiable and smaller dollar amounts than we have in previous years. So we were actually able to include pretty much everyone. For public service, that meant we had a little extra. So that's where that was put forth, was the Meridian Food Bank funds. The Senior Advisory Board, that resource guide is meant to capture some specific information. It's supposed to mirror some of the old, we had a Meridian citizen resource guide that we still have, we have some copies of around here. This is specific to seniors. It's meant to be a resource for probably the most heavy hit and the most hard hit seniors that we have within the City of Meridian, and the Senior Advisory Board is heading that up. Catch, who we've worked with just this past year, they've also asked to be included. They've decreased their amount significantly from last year, and that probably has to do with they have decided that their capacity to meet Meridian need and the Meridian need itself with one individual that's working there is a little bit less than what they had originally intended for last year. For public facilities, the 5 Mile Creek pathway is a direct enhancement to the LMI. It's actually this particular segment of the pathway is right in one of those LMI areas, connects to one of our new LMI areas, and completes a pathway from Pine to Fairview. Just of note, Washington Park Apartments, which is a USDA-funded low-income housing facility, is within 100 feet of this, or a few hundred feet of this continued pathway project. The Meridian Elementary Picnic Shelter and Recreational Facility. This continues to shape probably one of the LMI's largest green spaces to be a community amenity. This project, in conjunction with the fitness path that was just now constructed this year, continues to turn this into a park-like and have park-like value to that green space right in the middle of the LMI. The Meridian Boys and Girls Club, this particular project will fund them for painting the exterior to bring that exterior from its current dilapidated appearance to hopefully online with what the new gymnasium is going to look like. So that should marry up. Madam Mayor, regrettably, there's a slide missing, and I will just go ahead and talk that. It's the decent housing. That's the portion of this next year's program year. We are going to partner with Neighborhood Housing Services and Boise City Ada County Housing Authority for $50,000 each of those organizations to total $100,000. Again, $49,000 or so of that is coming from previous years. And what that is for, as we have done in the past, is work with them to find low-income housing individuals or low-income individuals who meet qualifications, bank qualifications to qualify for a loan, but can't afford the closing costs, can't afford some of their down payment. And that's what we've done in the past with them here in Meridian. And so those two projects will go forward with this program here, with this action plan. And then for program administration, the city's asking for 20%, which is our cap, which is not usually normal. We usually ask for a little less than that. And the reason why is because we need to start our planning schedule for 2017. We're there already. We have to start it about a year early. We also have the analysis of impediments that happens area-wide that we partner with Boise and and Nampa to actually conduct. So that is why it's at the cap there. Fair housing, outreach, and education, we're keeping the same amount that we usually do every year for fair housing. This year we are including a couple alternate products to the action plan based on previous recommendations and the fact that we have had projects that were large dollar amounts that were not able to fulfill their commitment or go forward. These two projects are both MDC projects. One of them is the sidewalk improvements. The second one is the facade improvements. This is very similar to what we've done in the past with MDC, and in the past it didn't work very well. MDC has a new plan to institute that has a different cost measurement to the individuals and the businesses that are applying to that. This particular alternate activity is completely contingent on finishing the slum and blight plan that will happen and we will RFP for in this following year. That is not tied to the action plan, but it is contingent upon. As of right now, there's been 0 public comment. I have received none. If there are any other public comments tonight, they'll be included, addressed, and added to before submission to HUD. At this time, Madam Mayor, staff will stand for any questions that you or the council may have, and subsequent to those questions, present these requested actions on the slide to Mayor and Council for action.
Thank you, Sean. Council, any questions? Okay, thank you, Sean. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to provide testimony? Yes, please. Good afternoon, Ralph. If you'll please state your name for the record.
Ralph Chappelle, 1899 South Swan, Meridian.
Thank you.
Where does the money come from for this?
The money comes from the
Federal government?
From the federal government.
I see. So we're $18 trillion in debt, and now we're going to take and spend this so our grandkids can pay for it at the end? Is that what this amounts to?
Well, I think that's a philosophical question that I'm not prepared to answer. I would offer it to council too. I think
Yes.
that to a certain degree, yes, but to another degree, there's a number of funds that are allocated in all of the budgets. If one doesn't accept the funding, it's reallocated to others. So I don't know if you're necessarily saving money, but you're allocating those funds to the taxpayers that actually pay them.
The future taxpayers.
To the
Not
current
us.
taxpayers.
We're buying it from the Chinese. So our grandkids are going to have to take care of it. And I don't like this at all. Yes, it has good programs, but it's sure making somebody else pay for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ralph.
Madam Mayor.
Ms. Myla.
Ralph, I agree with you, and I believe there are also there are a ton of wasted dollars that the federal government spends. You know, unfortunately, we're not in that position to make those huge changes that I believe need to be made, where there are a lot larger amounts of money. And like the mayor said, if we don't accept this money to improve our neighborhoods, they're just going to give it to somebody else. So that isn't going to fix the problem.
Any further testimony?
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Kavner.
Seeing no further testimony, I move that we close the public hearing on resolution number 15-1082.
I have a motion and a second to close the public hearing on item 7C. All those in favor say aye.
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 Madam Mayor.
All ayes. Mr. Kavner.
All right. I move that we approve proposed resolution 15-1082
for program year 2015 of the Community Development Block Grant Annual Action Plan.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve resolution under 7D. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, will you call roll?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Cavanagh.
Aye.
Councilmember Mylum.
Aye.
Councilmember Byrd.
Aye.
Councilmember Roundtree.
Aye.
Councilmember Borton.
Aye.
Councilmember Zaremba.
Aye.
All ayes, motion carried.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Kavner.
can you now direct staff to forward that program recommendation on to HUD for their review and approval?
They will do that per our resolution.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sean. Item 8A is under Department Reports, and we'll hear from our Public Works Department with a streetlight enhancement report. I'm assuming that, Warren, you are the lucky
Madam Mayor, members of the
person
council.
to give this.
Actually, Austin is supposed to be here to give that report. I know he prepared the presentation because I reviewed it. And quite honestly, I'm not exactly sure where he is at. Yeah. So maybe we can postpone that or move it further, and Jay's going
We
to see
will
if he can track
certainly
him
do
down.
item 8B first, and then we'll get back to this.
Sorry
one.
about that.
Okay. Council, this is under City Council Liaison and Committee Updates. So we'll start with Mr. President to my right. That would be Mr. Roundtree.
Just a point to Ralph's comment, and I appreciate that very much. If we'll recall here a couple years ago, our Congress took probably the only step that I know of in recent years to try to reduce its spending through the Sequestration Act. These HUD fund monies, as with a number of grant programs that the federal government supports, are subject to the sequestration process, which is a process to reduce federal spending. And in fact, the grant monies, we've seen the grant monies that are available reduce over the past few years, and now they're starting to come back. I don't know why. But at least that act was an act to get a handle on the budget, but not necessarily the deficit. So if that's any solace, at least they're attempting to balance the budget through actions. And the final point is, we didn't raise our hand and say, we want this money. The dollar amount was sent to us saying, you have this much money based on your income levels in this particular area to spend to improve the communities in which they live and improve their lives. So that's where we are. For what it's worth to you, Ralph, anyway. Just my thought. As far as liaison stuff, Madam Mayor, we all know how well you use your head in doing your job, but the last week you've taken it to an extreme.
Well, it's a good thing I'm hard-headed, right?
As far as the other liaison activities go, the budget and the budget numbers have been moved forward and into and through the budget hearing process. I'll let the mayor talk about her activities and whatnot that she's undertaken the last couple, 3 weeks. I will point out that not a city nor a liaison activity, but another activity that the Western Native Recreation District Board yesterday did approve a resolution to move forward with a potential bond for aquatic center to be partnered with the other partners that are coming together with the school district, the library, the YMCA at the southern Meridian area. We're waiting for the amount to be established, but we'll be moving forward with an attempt to get a bond to do that, as will the library board.
Thank you for that update. I appreciate it. Mr. Borton.
Madam Mayor, met most recently with Chief Niemeyer talking about what's developed in the fire department, specifically the master planning process. The study that was funded by the council is going to commence soon, and there's also going to be some good feedback provided to us this fall with regards to the alternate response vehicle opportunities, pros and cons. Get some feedback from us as to what problems we're looking to solve from that, financial and operational, and then we should, November, December, have some report back on opportunities with that program, and also how that can help address some of the issues we talked about in the budget process, most specifically with the fire truck replacement costs and additional opportunities to lengthen their lives and of the fire trucks, and kind of do more with less, as every department has to do with limited means. So those are two big action items that are underway, and we should have a lot of good information back before the end of the year on both of those. So big projects moving for fire.
Thank you. Mr. Zaremba.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, my two departments, the legal department is doing just fine and trucking along. Public Works is also, the director told me recently, and I'm trying to remember the details. I'm going to make some details up, and Warren can correct me if I get them wrong. But my understanding is that the federal NPDES permit has been given to us in draft form, as well as Nampa's and Eagles, I think it is, that came out at the same time. And we have something like 45 days to respond to that. Am I going off base here?
You're really close, but
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, actually the final draft, it's not a draft form anymore, the actual permit has been issued. Yeah. There's a 60-day comment period, which we have opportunity to provide comments, so does anybody else. And we are evaluating with our consultants what comments to provide regarding that permit, and it's Nampa and Caldwell and City Meridian who have all had their permits issued at this point.
Thank you. That's an example that even though I wear hearing aids, that doesn't stop things from going in one side and out the other. So, thank you for saying I was close. Separate from that, Valley Regional Transit, some of us are going to get together next week to do a review of our Saturday bus service, and some updates and some ideas on making it more effective. Councilman Roundtree has had a preview of that because he's going to be gone next week and won't be able to meet, but we will learn what we can learn, and I will make a report on that later. But we are looking into the Saturday bus service and how it's gone and what else we can do. That's it for me.
And perhaps if we can use that money in a different way that would have a greater impact.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Byrd.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, in the Parks Department, tomorrow we'll expect everybody out there at 4 o'clock to cut the ribbon for the Park, Meridian Park. I'm sure a lot of four-legged citizens will be out there running around doing it. Other than that, they just keep making our parks look nice and do a good job there. My finance department has got the budget ready for public hearing the 25th, and then we'll proceed on getting it through. And at the MDC, tomorrow morning at 7:30, anybody that wants to come and hear our proposed budget are welcome to show up, 7:30 here.
Thank you, Mr. Byrd. Ms. Mylum.
Madam Mayor, so with information services, I started a project this week with the clerks, IT, and legal to write a software program to automate the public records request process. That'll be nice. And in the police department, they're going to install all the furniture tomorrow, including the defensive tactics mats in the PSTC. We've got temporary occupancy and are waiting for the signage before they can get final sign-off. The first classes are scheduled for August 30th, and we'll have a grand opening ribbon cutting sometime in September. The 2 new officers are about 3 weeks out from graduating the academy.
All right.
Mr. Kavner.
Last but not least, community development shared with me today that the New Ventures Lab continues to be successful. They're hosting a variety of events. They've even been able to partner with Harvest Church on some parking-related issues so that the attendees have plenty of parking, which is appreciated, and a good sign that space continues to be used. Project Burbank continues to move forward, and there's a new project on the works titled Project Arcadia that could bring up to 500 jobs with an average salary of about $75,000. So Economic Development's excited about the possibility with that. And we're about 2 weeks out from the close to the RFP for the Performance Arts Center. We'll hopefully get some responses on that. In HR, they're taking a big breath coming off of our budget hearings, but are quickly jumping into open enrollment. And Patty spent some time with me sharing their communication plan to educate our employees about some potential changes, make sure everybody understands some of the new offerings in our benefits package this year. Couple other things. Thanks to Police and Fire for National Night Out last week. I know many of us were able to attend. I thought it was great. It's always nice to come hungry and leave happy from events like that. It was great to connect with some of our citizens. And Mayor, it's nice to see you back. I'm glad you're okay. I know we all are.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Madam Clerk, Miss whatever.
I just wanted to quickly make a clarification that the public hearing for the budget is on September 1st.
September 1st, yes.
Thank you. I guess Mr. Roundtree suggested that I tell you what I've been doing, and didn't do much of anything last week. And if I did, I don't remember. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I'm just hopeful that I didn't send any emails out that I'll regret later. So, but, you know, for a while I could always blame a concussion. So that was my story. Again, I'll stick to it. We were glad to wrap up the budget and have things firmly in place for our public hearing. And we will be working on making sure that our citizens know what is in the upcoming proposed budget, and they know that they have an opportunity to provide public comment. We did do a town hall meeting about 3 weeks ago at the Meridian Library. We appreciated the library and their hospitality. We had a fairly good turnout, in particular because it is summer, but we really appreciate the unplugged format where the people that were in attendance had the opportunity to ask questions that were on their mind. And we also reached out via social media and had questions that were asked in advance of the program so that we could answer those as well. It was streamed, and so those that asked the questions online did have an opportunity. If they couldn't join us, they had the opportunity to join us online and view the answers to their questions as well. We did put it out via social media, answered them directly to the citizens as well. So we had our executive council strategic planning meeting with Mayor's Youth Advisory Council at my home, and had an opportunity to do some team building, but also look at the year ahead. We have a very dynamic executive council. I'm so excited to work with this group. Each year I think it can't get better, and then they make me wrong. They show me how they can just beat the year before with their enthusiasm, their ideas, their dedication and hard work. So I'm really looking forward to this group and working with them and seeing what they're able to accomplish. I just try and stay out of their way. We had a retreat with our senior management team to start filling in the tactical plan with our strategic plan. There's a lot of work to be done, but we did make a commitment to the council that we would have something to you in November. And because there is a lot of work to do, we spent a day over on the Cincy campus and tackled some of the all hands on deck strategies that will require all of our departments, gave an idea of what the format and walking through a process that each can employ as they fill out their strategic initiatives and put together the tactical plan. We had a meeting with our senior advisory committee, and the Senior Advisory Board meets quarterly. We have decided to start meeting monthly, which is good, until we really find our pace and find the direction, establish some real focus areas. The monthly meeting makes a lot more sense. At some point, when we're well established and we know the direction we're going, we might move back to meeting less frequent, but for now we've moved it to a monthly meeting. Councilman Roundtree and I met with, in regards to the golf course, and met with the operators and the golf associations and had a really good dialogue with them. I know that we wrapped up our youth work life skills program, had a real good group of young teens that got a lot of great exposure to what public service is all about. They talked about the things they liked, the things that we could improve with the program. But we had a real energetic group this year, and they were really excited about the types of work that they were involved in and what they were exposed to. They were very appreciative of the program and send kudos to the council for continuing to allow the savings to be invested in our youth. And finally, we had our first ever Kids Fest in the Kleiner Park for a first year event that was very well attended, and they had a lot to offer to our families and our young ones in this community. So there's always a lot going on. It's always amazing to me how much is going on in our community to choose from, and I'll leave it with that. Anything further from our council members? Okay. I will then go back to our 8A and offer the podium to Austin. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. I apologize for my tardiness.
It's all right. I think we were probably surprised you by doing it quicker than you thought, huh?
Well, and I was listening to the live stream, but apparently I just realized maybe if you hit the pause button when you do something else, it doesn't, when you hit play, immediately go to where things are happening. So as far as I knew, you're still talking about Republic Services. Anyway, thank you. I'm here today to give an update on where the streetlight enhancement funds have been spent for the past few years. Back at the budget hearing in June, you asked that Public Works come and give an update to you, and that's why I'm here today. So to start with, since 2011, we have done 4 capital streetlight improvement construction projects, and we have another one underway this year. The pictures that you see below are representative of those projects. Down in the bottom left-hand corner, we have Northwest 8th Street. In the center is Linder, Biddick to Cherry. In the bottom right-hand corner, you can see the results of Linder, Cherry to Sandalwood Phase 1. And in the top right-hand corner, that's an image after our Main Street corridor conversion project. So in the next few minutes, I'm going to give you a little more information on each of those projects, as well as some of the projects that we're going to be doing in the future. So the Northwest 8th Street pedestrian lighting was the first capital street lighting project that the Public Works Department had done in quite some time. This was constructed in 2011. Here in the bottom left-hand corner, you can see how 8th Street looked prior to this project. It was very dark. There were bike lanes that were installed, and this was a major walking route to school, so it became a priority area for us to install street lighting. And this project was constructed using CDBG grant funds, and it resulted in the installation of 7 new light poles and 8 LED fixtures. We were able to reuse 1 existing pole that was there. Another project that was also done in 2011 was an energy efficiency grant funded project, and this was our Main Street corridor conversion, where we converted 57 decorative fixtures and 91 roadway fixtures to more energy efficient fixtures. The decorative fixtures went from being 150 watt high pressure sodium lights to 80 watt induction lamps. And the total result in electric savings is 81 megawatt hours of electricity annually, which correlates to a $4,200 reduction in our annual electric cost. We also expect from that project to see over $70,000 in reduced maintenance due to the longer lifespan of the LED and induction lamps. The total cost of this project was $113,000. We received those funds from an energy efficiency grant program that was available in 2011. So both of those projects were received very well, and they led us to come to you and ask for enhancements to do projects throughout the city. The first of these projects that we did in 2012 was Linder Road, Biddick to Cherry. And in looking at areas where streetlights were needed, the Linder Road corridor between Biddick and Chateau was identified as a high need area and became our top priority for these projects. This area is the safe route to school walking area for 3 different schools: Meridian High School, Meridian Middle School, and the Barbara Morgan STEM Academy. So this first project, Linder Road, Biddick to Cherry, included the installation of 13 new streetlights. The design was completed in-house, and the total cost was $50,000. Here in the image, you can see the result of this project. It's resulted in very good illumination. We have received a lot of positive feedback on it, and unfortunately, I do not have a before picture of this section of roadway, but I'm sure that some of you can remember how dark it was prior to this construction project. The next project that we did was Linder Road, Cherry to Sandalwood Phase 1. This included the installation of 2 LED lights north of Cherry Lane. This also complemented a ACHD sidewalk installation on the east side of the roadway that they installed as part of their Safe Route to School program. Here you've seen these pictures before. Here on the left is the before picture. You can barely even see that there is an intersection there and a pedestrian crossing, versus after the lights, that area is lit up, as is the sidewalk on the east side of the roadway. So this year, starting next month, we actually just had a bid opening for the Linder Road Cherry to Sandalwood Phase 2 yesterday. The project came in within budget, and so we'll be installing 5 lights north of the ones installed on Phase 1. This image that you see on the right is taken in the exact same location as the 2 on the previous slide. It's just facing north. So next year, this area will be illuminated as well, and I'll have a after picture to show you then. So in addition to these construction projects, we've also spent some of these funds on design projects. The largest of these was the Franklin Road Black Hat to 10 Mile illumination project. ACHD and ITD are doing a major road widening project with in 2016 and 2017. And with this, we'll be installing 46 new LED streetlights. The street lighting qualifies for the federal funds of the project, given that it's part of the roadway infrastructure, but we are required to pay a local 7.3% match on those funds. That money was included in the enhancement that was brought to you earlier this year. The second design project that we've done was the Settlers Park frontage lighting, and this will be installed with the ACHD construction projects on Ustick and Meridian Road in 2017. And it includes a total of 17 streetlights. So in addition to those designs, we'll talk about the upcoming construction projects that we have. So in 2016, we are looking at paying for the Franklin Black Hat to 10 Mile Road construction, and we're also looking at doing some residential street lighting improvements, as we talked about with the enhancement brought to you earlier. And in 2017, we're looking at also continuing installing lighting in needed areas in some of the older subdivisions on the residential streets, particularly in areas where there's intersections that have no lighting along safe routes to school and near bus stops and areas where kids walk. And we are also in 2017 going to have a Cherry Lane Linder to Meridian roadway lighting project that ACHD will be installing roadway lighting along that whole mile, and that will be done with local highway safety improvement grant funding, and we will be coming to you for enhancement on that for a local match with that project as well. And are there any questions?
Thank you, Austin. Council, any questions?
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Kavner.
one question, Austin. What determines where you do these projects at? I mean, do you have a matrix that you look at to say one intersection is more important than another, and how do you ultimately determine where you go?
Madam Mayor, Councilman Kavner, yes, for the intersection improvement projects that we will be doing in 2016, 2017, I have put together a matrix. That matrix identifies the higher need areas, and parts of what go into that are the number of legs on the intersections, the roadway geometry, how hard it is to see, the signage and other things that are happening there. Complaints that we have received from citizens is a factor in that, as well as crime in the area. So those all go into the matrix in determining the priority for the intersections where we'll be installing lights.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything further? Thank you for bringing this back and follow up to the presentation we had during the budget workshop. I know council appreciates the information and the improvement. This has been a priority for life safety and community safety reasons, and I think you've been able to really show the positive outcomes of the program and the direction that it's going. So thank you, Austin, for doing that.
All right, thank you.
You need to watch that pause button.
I do.
Well, yeah, when you pause it, it stops time.
I paused there for a while myself. Okay, council, anything for item number 9, future meeting topics?
I have none.
Seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn into executive session
Madam
per
Mayor.
item 10? Mr. Byrd,
I move we go into executive session as per Idaho State Code 74-206-1D.
Second.
a motion and a second to adjourn into executive session. Madam Clerk, will you call roll?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Cavanagh.
Aye.
Councilmember Mylum.
Aye.
Councilmember Byrd.
Aye.
Councilmember Roundtree.
Aye.
Councilmember Borton.
Aye.
Councilmember Zaremba.
Aye.
Thank you. All ayes.
Settle about.
6 weeks though is off.
What have my name? Yes.
I don't know. That was the way
I logged on your, I know, I logged on your computer. That's really weird.